What would you do if the person you trusted most abandoned you on the side of the road, holding your 3-week-old baby in freezing rain? That's exactly what happened to me. My husband shoved me out of the car at midnight, drove away, and left me standing there with nothing. No phone, no money, no family to call. But then a black BMW pulled over. A stranger stepped out, looked at the necklace around my neck, and said words that changed my life forever. I've been looking for you for 20 years. That was the moment I realized my husband wasn't the only person hiding the truth. Get out. And take that child with you. My husband shoved the car door open, and freezing rain slammed into me like ice water. I stepped out with our 3-week-old son in my arms, and before I could even pull the blanket over his tiny face, Ryan's taillights disappeared into the dark. Then a black BMW slowed beside me. A man stepped out, looked at me once, and his entire expression changed. His voice cracked when he spoke. I've been looking for you for 20 years. The first thing I remember from that night wasn't Ryan's voice. Not the car door. Not even the rain. It was the sound Noah made against my chest. That tiny frightened cry newborn babies make when cold air hits them too fast. The second I heard it, everything inside me snapped into focus. I stopped shaking. Stopped thinking. There was only one thing that mattered. Protect the baby. I wrapped both arms around him, and turned my back against the wind. The road was nearly empty. We lived outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, in one of those suburbs where every house looks perfect from the outside. Vetlons. Maple trees. 2-car garages. The kind of neighborhood where everyone smiles in daylight and hides their damage after dark. It was close to midnight in late November. The rain had teeth. Ryan had left my phone inside the car. He knew it too. I had reached for it before he shoved the door open. He looked right at me, and drove away anyway. I stood there trying not to panic. My mother had been gone most of my life. No father. No siblings. No relatives whose number I could call from memory. Foster care teaches you one thing very early. Nothing stays. Not homes. Not people. Not promises. The few friends I had lived too far away to help, and even if they could, I had no phone, no wallet, no diaper bag. Just my baby. A blanket. And the taste of blood in my mouth where I'd bitten my cheek trying not to cry in front of Ryan. Then headlights slowed behind me. Instinctively, I stepped farther off the road. A woman alone at midnight learns fear before she learns hope. But the car didn't pass. It stopped. The driver's door opened. A tall man stepped out, maybe mid-40s, wearing a dark overcoat already wet from rain. He approached carefully, not aggressively, keeping enough distance so I wouldn't panic. "Ma'am," he called gently over the storm. "Are you hurt?" I didn't answer. Every instinct inside me narrowed into one command. Protect Noah. The man came closer, then stopped. The headlights hit my face. And suddenly his expression changed. Not pity. Not curiosity. Shock. His eyes locked onto the silver necklace hanging from my neck. The blanket had slipped just enough for the small oval pendant to show. My mother's pendant. For a second, the man looked like he'd seen a ghost. "That necklace," he said quietly. "Where did you get it?" My throat burned. "It belonged to my mother." He took a slow breath. "What was her name?" I should not have answered him. Every survival instinct I had said don't trust strangers. But exhaustion, my God. He stepped forward before stopping himself. "I've been looking for you for 20 years. I tightened my grip on Noah immediately. "I don't know you." "No," he said quickly. "Of course you don't." He raised both hands slightly, palms open. "My name is Daniel Mercer. I knew your mother." I said nothing. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he continued softly. "But your baby is freezing. Please let me help you." Noah whimpered against my chest. That sound broke through every fear I had. Daniel opened the back door of the BMW and stepped away so I could see inside. No one else was there. Just a folded wool blanket across the seat. He didn't try to touch me. Didn't reach for Noah. He simply waited. Finally, I got in. The heat hit my face so suddenly it hurt. My hands shook too hard to wrap Noah properly. Daniel climbed into the driver's seat and turned the heater higher. "Nearest emergency room is 12 minutes, he said calmly. I nodded. For the first few minutes, the windshield wipers were the only sound in the car. Slowly, Noah's breathing settled. I watched Daniel carefully. The way he drove. The way he kept both hands on the wheel. The way he didn't force conversation to make himself seem trustworthy. Finally, I asked, "How did you know my mother?" He stared ahead for a moment. "I knew her 20 years ago," he said quietly. "And I owe her more than I can ever repay." That wasn't really an answer. But something in his voice stopped me from pushing further. The hospital was painfully bright after the darkness outside. A nurse took one look at me and rushed us inside. They checked Noah first. His temperature was low but stable. Then they checked me. Mild exposure. Elevated blood pressure. No serious injuries. I sat in a plastic chair with Noah asleep against my chest while the adrenaline slowly drained from my body. Daniel stayed outside the exam room, didn't insert himself into every moment. About an hour later, a pediatric resident smiled and finally said the words I needed to hear. "He's okay." The relief hit so hard tears came before I could stop them. I turned away quickly. When I walked into the hallway, Daniel was standing near the vending machines holding a paper cup of coffee. He looked older than he had earlier, tired in a way that felt deeper than exhaustion. "Emily," he said softly. I froze. I had never told him my name. He noticed immediately. "Your hospital bracelet," he explained quietly. I looked down at it and felt stupid. Then his expression shifted. "There's something you need to know." My stomach tightened. 20 years ago, he said slowly, "your mother called me for help." The hallway suddenly felt very still. "She told me she was leaving. She said she was taking you with her." He swallowed hard. "I told her I'd come." I already knew the next part before he said it. "But you were late." He nodded once. "When I got there, police were outside." I stopped breathing. Lena was dead. The words hollowed me out instantly. "How?" "They ruled it an accident." "Was it?" Daniel looked directly at me. "No." The answer landed like a stone. "Then why wasn't anyone charged?" "Because there wasn't enough evidence," he said bitterly. "Because he had money. Because he had lawyers. Because 20 years ago women lost battles like that every day." My hands tightened around Noah's blanket. "And me?" Daniel's eyes darkened. "You disappeared into the foster system. Emergency placement. County transfers. Sealed records. Every time I got close, the trail vanished." He looked exhausted just saying it. "I hired investigators. I kept searching." "Why?" His eyes met mine. "Because your husband didn't just abandon you tonight." His voice lowered. "He reminded me of the man your mother was trying to escape." The words hung in the air long after he said them. I stood there holding Noah while fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and nurses moved through the hallway like the world had not just shifted beneath my feet. My first reaction was anger. Not because I believed him. Because I didn't want to. Foster care teaches you how to survive by avoiding certain questions. Questions about parents. About abandonment. About why nobody came back. You build walls around those rooms inside yourself. And suddenly a stranger had kicked one open. "What does that mean?" I asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Not here. You don't get to say something like that and walk away." "I'm not walking away." "Then explain." He looked toward Noah sleeping in my arms. "You're exhausted. Your son needs warmth. You need rest. Give me 1 hour and I'll tell you everything." I hated that he sounded reasonable. I hated even more that I had nowhere else to go. A hospital social worker stopped by a few minutes later. Older woman. Practical eyes. The kind of person who had seen every form of heartbreak already. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay?" she asked gently. "No." "Do you want us to call police?" My mouth opened. And nothing came out. That's the thing people don't understand about abuse. From the outside, it looks obvious. From the inside, your mind keeps trying to protect the person hurting you. He was stressed. He didn't mean it. He'll come back. Even after everything, part of me still loved the version of Ryan I thought I knew. The social worker looked at me for a long moment. She'd seen that silence before. Then Daniel spoke quietly. "I have a guest house. Separate entrance. Separate key." She can leave whenever she wants. By the time we left the hospital, it was almost 4 a.m. The rain had slowed to mist. Daniel drove us through dark county roads lined with bare trees and old stone walls. His home surprised me. Not flashy. Not some giant mansion trying to impress people. Just an older brick house with warm lights glowing through the windows. Lived in. Safe. But he didn't take me inside the main house. He led me to a small guest cottage behind it. 1 bedroom, he said. Bathroom. Heat's already on. There's bottled water, formula towels. Then he placed an envelope on the counter. Cash. Just in case. I stared at it. I'm not taking your money. That's not charity. Then what is it? He looked tired. A man making sure a woman and her child never stand in the rain again. Then he left. I locked the door behind him and stood there listening. No footsteps. No shadows outside. No sounds except Noah breathing. And for the first time since Ryan abandoned me, I cried. Not loudly. Just enough for my body to release what it could no longer hold. The next morning the hospital called. They'd found my phone in the emergency intake area. Daniel had already gone to pick it up. I stared at the screen after the call ended. 14 missed calls from Ryan. Then the texts. Where the hell are you? Don't do anything stupid. And finally, you made me lose my temper. We'll talk when you calm down. I read that message 3 times. No apology. No concern for Noah. No, are you safe? Just blame rearranged into softer words. Something inside me sharpened. Later that morning, Daniel knocked once and waited outside. He brought coffee, diapers, oatmeal, and baby supplies. You didn't have to do that, I said. Yes, he replied calmly. I did. He stayed near the doorway. You asked me to explain. I nodded. Your mother worked at a legal aid office in Harrisburg, he began. I was a young attorney. We met when we were both 24. His expression softened with memory. She was funny, smart, braver than she realized. Then his face darkened. She married young. The wrong man. By the time Daniel understood how abusive the marriage was, Lena was already trying to escape. One night she called me, he said quietly. She had enough money for a bus ticket. She said she had you. She asked if I could meet her. His throat tightened. I said yes. He looked down. But I was late. I already knew what came next. When I arrived, she was dead. Iset frozen. They ruled it accidental, he continued bitterly. But it wasn't. Why didn't they arrest him? Because he had influence. Lawyers. Money. And because the system failed her. I looked down at Noah sleeping in my arms. And me. Daniel's eyes filled with regret. You vanished into foster care. He explained how records were lost. How files were sealed. How he spent years searching for me. Why keep looking? I whispered. Because I promised her. Then I asked the question that wouldn't leave my mind. What did you mean about Ryan? Daniel leaned back. I had someone look into him. I blinked. You what? You were abandoned on a freezing road with a newborn. I needed to know whether he was dangerous. That was fair. It still unsettled me. What did you find? His expression hardened. He has significant debt. No, I said immediately. Ryan doesn't gamble. He does. I started to deny it again, then stopped. Suddenly memories rearranged themselves. Late nights. Hidden screens. Irritated because he may have believed there was money connected to your family. I stared at him, and suddenly a terrifying thought entered my mind. Maybe Ryan hadn't just stopped loving me. Maybe he'd been waiting for something. For the next several days, I barely left the cottage. Ryan kept calling. Sometimes angry. Sometimes apologetic. Sometimes manipulative. You embarrassed me. I was stressed. I didn't mean for things to go that far. Then finally, don't let other people get in your head. That line stayed with me, as if the rain hadn't happened, as if reality itself depended on whether someone else acknowledged it. 3 days later, Daniel drove me into Harrisburg to meet a lawyer named Margaret Ellis. Gray hair, sharp eyes, no patience for excuses. She asked direct questions. Did he push you? Yes. Did he know the baby was with you? Yes. Did he leave your phone behind intentionally? Yes. She wrote everything down quietly. Then she looked up. What do you want, Emily? The question should have been easy. Instead, I sat there struggling to answer. What did I want? An apology? Understanding? Closure? Finally, I whispered. I want him to stop making me feel like this was my fault. Margaret held my gaze. We can work with that. That night, I logged into our joint accounts for the first time in months. At first, everything looked normal. Then I kept scrolling. Withdrawals, cash advances, payment processors I didn't recognize, loans. The numbers blurred together. Ryan had hidden nearly $48,000 in debt. I sat there stunned. The late nights, the mood swings, the constant tension about money. I thought it was stress. It was panic. Then Margaret called again. There's another issue, she said. That evening, Daniel finally explained. Before Lena died, there had been a pending civil claim involving her husband's business. A small parcel of land tied to the case had remained untouched for decades. But now, developers wanted that area. Warehouse expansion, distribution centers. Land values had exploded. Ryan worked in logistics. He would know exactly what that land might be worth. Suddenly everything made sense. The questions he'd asked over the years. Family history, property, documents. He wasn't curious. He was searching, inventorying. The realization didn't break me all at once. It spread slowly. The worst part wasn't the lie. It was understanding that Ryan had reached into the deepest wound I carried, the abandoned child inside me, and used it because he thought there might be money hidden there. I stood abruptly. I need air. Outside, the night was cold and clear. Daniel followed a minute later, but stayed back. Did he ever love me? I asked quietly. Daniel thought before answering. Yes. That surprised me. You believe that? Ido. Then how does someone do this? Daniel stared into the dark yard. Because sometimes fear, greed, and weakness grow larger than love. Then my phone buzzed. A forwarded text from Margaret. Ryan had accidentally sent it to the wrong number. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. She always does. My entire body went still. There it was. No guilt. No confusión. No regret. Just certainty. He thought he already knew how my story would end. For the first time since that night in the rain, I felt anger. Not wild anger. Cold anger. Useful anger. Over the next week, I stopped crying and started paying attention. Every morning I fed Noah, walked the cottage floor while he slept against my shoulder, then sat at the kitchen table. They simply exist. Margaret called every few days. Don't confront him yet, she warned. Men who think they're still in control usually expose themselves. She was right. Ryan's messages kept shifting. Anger, charm, self-pity. Think about Noah. You're emotional right now. You don't have to make this ugly. Ugly. As if abandoning your wife and newborn on a freezing road wasn't already ugly. Then the truth became even worse. Margaret discovered Ryan was having an affair with a co-worker named Melissa Grant. Their messages weren't romantic. They were transactional. Money, complaints, plans. 3 months before Noah was born, Ryan had downloaded separation papers. 3 months. While I painted the nursery. While I folded baby clothes. While I lay awake wondering if I'd be a good mother. That night Daniel found me sitting alone in the dark kitchen. He planned it, I whispered. Yes, he said quietly. I keep wondering where I missed the signs. You didn't. I should have. No. His voice stopped me. Trust isn't stupidity, Emily. It's what good people offer before they have a reason not to. That sentence stayed with me. 3 days later, I met Ryan at a coffee shop outside Mechanicsburg. Margaret insisted on coming. She sat 2 tables away pretending to read a newspaper. Ryan walked in wearing the gray coat I bought him 2 Christmases earlier. For 1 second I saw the man I once loved. Then I saw the hesitation in his eyes Then why didn't you leave before? He paused. I was trying to hold things together. For who? His expression hardened slightly. You want honesty? Yes. You changed during the pregnancy. Everything became stress. Bills. Fear. The baby. I felt trapped. That would have destroyed me once. Now I only heard selfishness. And Melissa? I asked. He froze. What? You tell me. Calculation flashed across his face. Then he exhaled. Okay. I made mistakes. How long? 6 months. Noah stirred in his carrier beside me. And the separation papers? His eyes snapped toward mine. How do you know about that? For the first time, panic appeared in his expression. You thought I'd sign whatever you handed me, I said quietly. He went pale. I never said that. Yes, I replied. You did. At the next table, Margaret slowly lowered her newspaper. Ryan saw her. His entire face changed. You brought a lawyer? I brought the truth. Margaret approached calmly and placed a folder on the table. Bank statements, debt records, hospital reports, phone logs, and finally, the text. She'll sign whatever I put in front of her. Ryan stared at the page while all the color drained from his face. My God, he whispered. Not to us. To himself. To the version of himself who never expected consequences. Then he looked at me. Who did this? I held his gaze. You did. When I stood to leave, he called my name softly. For a second he looked human again. Small. Scared. Then he said the one thing that ended everything. You don't understand what this will cost me. I looked at him for a long moment. Now you do. That night, Daniel was waiting on the porch when I returned. Without speaking, he handed me an old sealed envelope. Inside was a single folded letter. The first line stole the air from my lungs. Emily, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get far enough. I stopped breathing. Then read it again. I need you to know one thing above all else. I did not leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I loved you too much to survive staying. My knees gave out. I sat on the porch steps crying silently while rainwater from old memories seemed to rise all around me. My entire life had been built around one terrible question. Why didn't she stay? Now I finally knew. She tried. God, she tried. She wrote about hiding money, planning bus routes, packing a bag, calling Daniel because he was the only person she trusted to come. Then the line that shattered me completely. If you grow up believing I abandoned you, that will be the cruelest thing he ever did. For a long time, I couldn't keep reading, because suddenly the shape of my grief changed. The story I had carried my whole life wasn't true. At the end she wrote, be kind, but not small. Be brave, but not reckless. And if someone teaches you to live afraid, leave before fear becomes your home. She signed it simply, Mom. Daniel sat beside me quietly afterward. I'm sorry, he whispered. For what? For being 20 years late. I thought about the road, the rain, the headlights stopping. You came, I said. And somehow, that was enough. The divorce moved quickly after that. Ryan's attorney pushed for a quiet settlement. Margaret pushed harder. The evidence changed everything. The abandonment, the hidden debt, the financial deception, the risk to a newborn. In the end, I received primary custody of Noah. And oddly enough, that mattered more to me. I hadn't wanted revenge. I wanted truth. Outside the courtroom he stopped me. Emily. I turned. Do you hate me? I thought about it honestly. No. He looked shocked. Why not? Because hate keeps you tied to the person who hurt you. I held Noah closer. Rage can save you in the fire, but it's a terrible thing to build a life with. He lowered his eyes. You don't get that much of me anymore. That was the last time I saw him. Spring arrived slowly that year. Pennsylvania always takes its time with spring. The trees stay bare forever. And then one morning everything turns green. By April, Noah and I moved into a small duplex outside Harrisburg. Tiny kitchen. Narrow porch. Cracked mailbox. Perfect. I found part-time work at a non-profit legal aid office. Funny how life circles back sometimes. Daniel helped where he could. A crib. A used washing machine. Recommendations for pediatricians. Never too much. Never in a way that made me feel rescued. One afternoon he sat on my porch holding coffee while Noah slept inside. I set something up, he said. What kind of something? A college fund for Noah. I immediately started to protest. Daniel lifted one hand gently. It's not payment, he said. It's a promise. And somehow, that felt right. A promise moving forward instead of backward. In early May, it rained again. Soft spring rain this time. I stood at the window holding Noah while water slid down the glass. For one brief second, I was back on that road. Cold. Terrified. Watching taillights disappear. But this time the memory didn't own me. I looked down at my son. Warm. Safe. I opened the door. He smiled at Noah, then looked at me. You okay? I glanced around the little house. At the warmth. At the quiet. At the life we had rebuilt. Yes, I said. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, it was completely true. Revenge isn't always destruction. Sometimes revenge is surviving long enough to become unreachable. Sometimes it's refusing to let the people who hurt you decide what your future means. And sometimes the deepest kind of justice is this. The child who once stood alone in the rain grows up, walks inside, locks the door, and finally feels safe. If this story moved you, or reminded you of someone who kept going when life gave them every reason to stop, share it with someone who may need it. And if you believe dignity, truth, and second chances still matter, subscribe for more stories like this. Thank you for listening.